Welcome to Cosmic Roadmap. I'm your host, Melissa Lambor, Reiki Astrogeoguide and author. I support endless wanderers with where they are meant to be in the world. This podcast is for the digital nomad, the avid traveler, and aspiring globetrotter who is seeking their next destination on planet Earth. Join us as we venture around the world through people's stories and how astrogeography has connected them to their planetary energies and purpose. My special guest today is Tom Turpel. He is a digital marketing manager from the San Francisco Bay Area. He is also a co-producer of the Lineage Speaks podcast. His previous experiences have led him to travel throughout the US and have experiences such as walking the California coast. His interest in Reiki Astrogeography led him to wonder what pulled him to different locations in his travels and find other places where he may find inspiration. So we met through your wife, Mardelena Dawn, my co-author in our most recent best-selling book, Lineage Speaks, that released on the 21st of January. And it's been a pleasure to work with you since you just started this Lineage Speaks podcast. And so grateful that we also had a session since you were so interested in Mardelena's session that you came to me right after hers. So how has life been since our session?
Oh, wow. It's been great. When we first connected regarding the astrogeography, I was just really curious to what I would discover. I really didn't have specific locations I was seeking out. I was looking to see what you would find that maybe I was not aware of. And there certainly was a lot of locations that I never really even considered venturing to or really understanding what type of energy I was feeling in those places as well, which is really fascinating.
Because the most fascinating one was where you live right now in the San Francisco Bay Area. You had Mars energy, which is MC also, which is related to the future, your career, and then Sun energy, which is related to self because it was a DC energy. So the fact that it's allowed you, actually DC, it's actually seeing like the sun in others. So I almost feel like opportunity in others, and the Mars energy has allowed you to really take your business where you've wanted it to go.
Oh, absolutely. I think that definitely describes my experience where I currently live. I'm in a location where I've always found opportunity to thrive here and also finding opportunity to collaborate with others in this area. It's been a situation like throughout my whole professional career up here that like I've been able to get really inspired to work with other individuals in different ways. You know, case in point is with this podcast. This was something that was inspired based on what my wife was doing separately, and we were able to find a way for us to work together and thrive in a new medium.
And I love that because just like I mentioned with the sun DC energy, it's seeing the light in others. And that's exactly what has happened. And another thing that we touched upon very briefly in our session, and it was funny because of within a few weeks, you were going to New Orleans. To tap into that, we were talking about it being healing and also some disharmonious moon energy, which is related to family. And it just so happened that there was a bit of a disharmonious event. And if you want to dive a little deeper.
Absolutely. That was really serendipitous because like when we had our session, it was just suggested that this is like an area of healing.
Right.
And it was a couple weeks later that my grandmother passed, and my entire family, my wife, our 5 boys, we flew out for the services. I just found that completely fascinating that we touched upon that. And then within a matter of moments, I was going there not only for some closure and healing, but something related to family. And I can't tell you like how grateful I was we got to do that. One of the other major things that was really healing about that trip, not only because I got to pay my respects to my grandmother, but that was my first time out there, and a lot of the first time for a lot of my cousins. My dad's side of the family base they were Navy brats. They traveled around a lot when they were kids, and they had most of them stayed in Southern California, the Los Angeles area, after my grandparents moved out to Mississippi. So a lot of my cousins, we never got to go there. And so when we went, this was our first time, and we were able to see my grandfather's grave as well as pay
Wow.
respects to my grandmother. So there was a lot of closure there, not just for myself, but for a lot of my family that we were waiting to have for 30 plus years. That was really good. That was really comforting. And I'm really grateful I got to share that with my wife and my children.
No, exactly. And yeah, and the fact that it was a moon AC that's related to self. Yeah, you're doing this healing for yourself. And the Chiron MC is related to the future. Did it allow you to crack open or to see what was coming in the future for your career, for your family? The fact that you were able to bring your family must have been so healing as well.
Yeah, I would say there were two parts to the trip. One was that healing factor that happened at the beginning
Yeah.
with the services. When it came to really finding that energy in terms of career identity, I guess is the way you would describe it,
Yeah.
that definitely happened when we went to New Orleans, when we went to the French Quarter, if you will. And I found just like the harmony there with walking down the street and there being different types of music on every corner, with the food, just the energy itself. It regrounded me to a place to where when I came back to the Bay Area after that trip, I was like, okay, I'm ready to go. I know what's in front of me and I know how to step forward to make these next moves happen.
Right. And to make the next moves, like become a digital nomad, like actually take your business on the road, or what type of steps?
I think in terms of like how to evolve the tools and career that I have in place before me, I could be a digital nomad. I could take my career anywhere I want it. I mean,
Yeah,
physically anywhere I want it to go.
exactly.
But what I found is like there are definitely ways that I'm trying to evolve my current career and how I'm trying to evolve each facet of the businesses that I work with. Rounding up the trip within the French Quarter, it just gave me that footing again of where it didn't seem as chaotic as may it have appeared to be at the beginning. It was very, I came back with such a clear direction in
Yeah.
terms of where things need to go. I find it so fascinating because of like the whole family and healing energy that comes from that area. I am a huge fan of Cajun food. There
Mm.
has to be a box of Zatarain's in my pantry at all times. And it's a sense of comfort for me. So when we came back and we were discussing that, I'm like, oh my word, like this
I've been
type of
tapping
food is like
into
my
it. Yeah.
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 Wow, I did not even think of
Unconsciously,
that.
you're already tapping into that energy.
Yeah, I think that's what I've appreciated the most from our session was that it really uncovered some subconscious motives within myself that I really didn't pay attention to in the past.
Right,
And
right.
I'm like, yeah,
That's wild. Going back, I know that we went over Hawaii. That was a place that you have been to and visited, and you had Jupiter power zone there. And it was MC related to the future, like your career, and also sun energy, which was also related to the future and career. How did you feel there? Obviously, you didn't know that you had this epicenter or this power zone, but now that you know, it all came back to you and you're like, yeah, that makes complete sense.
yeah, no, like my experiences in Hawaii really, I mean, like they've been on a vacation or a
Right.
leisure experience, yet the times I was there, I was definitely looking up apartments to rent because I'm like, I think this is possible. Everyone
Right.
says it's so expensive, and they're right, but at the same time, I'm going, I think I can make this work.
Yeah, and the
And
Jupiter energy is all about ease and abundance and just things happening, like manifesting, just like you want it
yeah,
comes.
yeah, exactly. I certainly felt that energy over there. But I mean, things happen. I think that's always a good place to
Yeah,
retreat to
right.
in order to like capture that energy and then bring it back to my home and being able to use that each and every time. I think that's one of the ways I look at Hawaii now is like if I need to retreat in any
Mm,
way, like that's a location I can really focus on. I may not
exactly.
be able to physically be there, but I think finding ways to really hone in on that energy, like maybe listening to it would be a good way to do that, or
Right.
just desktop backgrounds of Maui or anything like
Exactly.
that, but
Just to
just
tune into
really
that energy, yeah, of Jupiter, right?
exactly.
The ease. Yeah, exactly. And I always tell my clients to do that at the end to fully embody. And one of the last interviews that I did, she created Pinterest boards of all the places. So that's another way to,
That's a good idea.
yeah, to just make this little board of all the inspirations. And it's very digital and sustainable, right? You don't have to have a full-on altar. You can just have these little Pinterest boards. A few other places that we looked at were Southern California, which was interesting because Martelena, she had good energy down there, but you didn't necessarily have good energy. So when I do couple sessions, I try to find the harmonious energy. That would probably be like a no-go for you in terms of your business because of the
Yeah,
disharmonious energy.
I could definitely support her in going down there and then coming back to me when she's back.
Right? You're like, yeah, not a good business move for me, but you go have fun.
I found that fascinating because I grew up in Los Angeles
Yeah,
and I moved up to the Bay Area when I was a teenager
right.
and always tried to find my way back to Southern California because I looked at it as home, and I still do. But every time I went down there, I always found myself back at the Bay Area with more opportunities, career and monetary wise. And every time I'd go back down, I'd be back in the Bay Area because there were other opportunities awaiting for me. So
Yeah.
it's so interesting that it just, my desire to go down there always boomeranged me back to the Bay Area.
And it makes complete
And
sense. Yeah, because it's disharmonious Mars energy. And up in the Bay Area, you have harmonious Mars energy. So the Mars energy being that fiery, like passion energy. And down there, it fizzled. There just nothing. Yeah, nothing was going to come of it. So it's interesting that the astro maps showed that. The other places were Europe, Mexico. I know Mexico, you were mentioning the connection that you have with Mexican culture, within California, and how you've already subconsciously been connecting through the cultures. And you had power zones down in the Puerto Vallarta, like Acapulco areas. So yeah, how have you felt that connection throughout your life?
yeah, growing up in California, Spanish has been a second language for me
Mhm.
since I was 13. I've definitely always embraced like the Latino culture that's around California.
Right.
And that's something I've always embraced subconsciously and appreciated. And so when I discovering that there were these zones within the Sea of Cortez area, I was like, okay, I'm willing to embrace that. And I never knew specifically it would be around that area, but I could definitely see venturing down there in the future.
Right.
Certainly, because I love warm weather. I love the ocean, and I love like the Latino culture that I've been able to be around my entire life, and being able to be more exposed to that in a different geography. That is something I'm really inspired by.
Yeah, and to connect to those power zones that you have, those strong power
Absolutely.
zones, because the
I
one
mean,
was Saturn energy, which is more of that discipline, that perseverance. So in terms of business, that would be really good for you. But then the moon node, moon energy, which is all about like retreating and family, but both of them being related to like your future and also career wise, it would be really good for you.
yeah, I mean, it definitely provided a great incentive to go travel down there. Like,
Yeah.
Puerto Vallarta's a power zone? Okay.
All right. Where's the next like where's the co-working
It,
space? Like I'm ready.
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, and you also had love energy down there. So it would be good you had Venus DC energy down there, which is actually seeing like love in others,
Uh-huh.
seeing that energy in others. So that would be really, yeah, that would be lovely for a family trip or just connecting with the culture. So that, yeah, I see that in the future for you. And then other places that we spoke about were Europe. We were just going all over the place on these maps.
Right. Yeah, you were very kind to me at the end of the session because I was just like, okay, what about this place?
Yeah,
What about this place? And yeah, I think there were like 3 areas that we touched on that I found very fascinating. One was Europe, around like Eastern France, Luxembourg, Western Germany
Benelux
area.
area. Yeah.
Yeah, because I never thought about traveling there before and what kind of energy I would find there. And ironically, that's a lot of where my ancestral heritage comes from.
That's right. So we were talking about that, and you have a moon line there, and it's DC, which is like moon or ancestral connections to others. So it's all about the
Yeah.
others. So yeah, that's really interesting that we found that. And I usually find the moon line. There's usually an ancestral connection there. So that was interesting.
The other place I found interesting was the Minnesota area, because I'm not a big fan of cold weather. So as soon as you said Minnesota, I'm like, okay, that's great, but I don't want to wear a big jacket.
Yeah, yeah. And what was the connection? Do you have family in Minnesota or you had been there?
No, no,
Yeah,
it just happened to be like an area I think that had
you have Jupiter
career.
and love energy. Yeah, so Venus and Jupiter energy. So a lot of ease around your business, and also it's Venus DC, so finding love in others. So it's a good combo for business and just like ease and community.
Yeah, and then I think the other area I found fascinating that you exposed me to was the Nova Scotia Canadian Maritime area. And that is also another place where a lot of my heritage comes from. And I've always been curious to go and travel to, just in the back of my head. I've never had the opportunity to yet,
Yeah.
but a lot of the energy that you discovered from that area as well, like really has provided some inspiration and incentive to go out there in the future at some point.
Yeah, that area you have moon node energy. So the moon node being the north node, that's related to your purpose. So you would be able to tap into your purpose related to your future and your career in that particular like Halifax area. You also have Mars energy there, which is very similar to the energy that you're on in the San Francisco Bay Area. So yeah, a lot of energy to like tune into more business related things.
Yeah, overall, it was just such a fascinating and exciting experience with the whole journey, because
Yeah.
I think there's always places that you're comfortable
Mhm.
traveling to, but what this experience with your session did was expose me to some places that were completely out of my comfort zone, or like I never would have considered discovering. So
And
thank you
it
for that.
Yeah, you're welcome. And it's all about figuring out these unconventional or these unexpected connections, because sometimes we don't think that there'll be energy in Africa, but we may start a nonprofit in a particular region in Africa that is harmonious to us. And then we would be connecting to that energy because we were doing work in that particular area. So I love bringing up these unexpected connections because you never know where they'll bring you. And where do you see yourself going now that you have this roadmap, right? You have this cosmic roadmap. How do you see yourself using these energies, and how have you incorporated the energies? Now you mentioned the screensavers and tapping into the energy of Mexico and New Orleans, but how do you see yourself tapping into these energies?
Certainly finding ways and resources that can bring those energies and locations closer to my home is
Mhm.
the first step. As you know, Martelene and I have 5 boys, so traveling is sometimes a little difficult for us.
Right.
But definitely, it's really made me consider places that I would like to travel to in the future.
Mhm.
And like looking at maybe the next time we do plan a vacation, maybe those are places that we will look to travel to. I can definitely see a trip to Hawaii in our future. Maybe not this coming year, but maybe in a couple years.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
would love to go down to Mexico, to Puerto
Mhm.
Vallarta, and spend some time. And I could definitely see that being rewarding for me in the future. So there's definitely some places that I would like to travel to in the next couple of years. We'll see if that happens. But in the meantime, recognizing those areas and the energies that are generated for me from those areas, if I need to make sure that like I could find ways to bring them closer to home and to myself.
Exactly. And just being strategic, right? Being more conscious of how you travel. And that's what my service allows you to do rather than just escaping and thinking, "Oh, let me just throw a dart at Europe and figure out where to go," but going along with that energy of where you're going to feel or find healing. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
So, dive a little deeper into how people can work with you. You've started this amazing podcast with Lineage Speaks, which is the book that me and Mardelena were in. But how did it start? How can people work with you? Other multi-author books, how can they work with you?
Yeah, thank you. For anyone, who's working on a multi-author book, please feel free to visit mardelenadawn.com. And you can send a message to my wife there, and we'll reach out to you and figure out ways that we can work with you in the future. But overall, yeah, we've just been working on the podcast and other upcoming forms of media together, and it's just been a real exciting journey. And if any of your listeners have not listened to Lineage Speaks yet, I recommend subscribing to it wherever you get your podcasts, because it's a great series, and your episode just dropped yesterday.
It
Yeah.
did. Our episode will be dropping sometime in May, but yes, it came out. What was the day? It was April
15th.
April 15th. Yeah, definitely check
Yeah.
out that episode. And I'll have the links below in the show notes so people can access the podcast. So thank you so much. Definitely reach out to Tom and Mardelena if you're looking to start a podcast for your multi-author book. Yeah, and thank you so much for being on and sharing your story.
Oh, it's my pleasure. This was a real treat. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And remember, lineage goes beyond your ancestors. You are meant to connect to the cosmos so you may finally find your cosmic family. Until next time. Thank you for listening to Cosmic Roadmap. If you're curious about astrogeography and where you're meant to be on the planet, go to cosmicroadmap.com to download your free passport to purpose. You can also book a session with me where we can explore your own cosmic roadmap and chart your next destination in business, love, and life.